Hello, and welcome to the 28th episode of Course Place. I'm so glad you've chosen to join me for today's conversation. In today's episode, I'll be talking about enduring the trials of life with God's guidance. As always, if you like what you hear, please leave a review and/or comments, follow my podcast, and tell your friends. Also, please follow the podcast page I've made on Facebook. If you would like to contact me via email instead of a Facebook message, you can email me at corachin@mailbox.org. If you are new here, welcome. I'm your host, Cora, and I am so excited to have you on this journey with me. Before I get into today's topic, I want to share today's Truth Talk. This is a new segment that I am introducing to the podcast. I may play around with it a little bit at first, as far as where I will place it in an episode, until I figure out the right spot for it. I would probably either end up putting it at the beginning of an episode or at the end of an episode, as putting it in the middle of an episode would not really work the greatest. I hope you enjoy it though. How I'm thinking it will work is that I will share a truth we can remember throughout the week, a verse to go along with it, and also my thoughts on the truth/verse. Almost like a devotional kind of thing. If you have any thoughts on the placement of this segment or something different I should do, please let me know. Today's truth is, you are not alone. God is with you always. The verse I think fits this the most is, so be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid and do not panic before them, for the Lord your God will personally go ahead of you. He will neither fail you nor abandon you. That is Deuteronomy 31:6 in the New Living Translation. God is always with us when we face trials, and He promised us that He would always be with us. We don't have to fear the storms life brings our way, because God is near us and won't leave us in the times we need Him most. Isn't that an amazing and comforting thought? Now, sit back, get comfortable, and enjoy today's episode. Today, I want to talk about enduring the trials of life with God's guidance. But before I get into that, I have a super quick announcement to share with you. I have decided to make an episode soon that I will need your assistance for. I am planning to make an episode where you will send in your thoughts on the podcast to me, and then I will read or share them on an upcoming episode. To send me your thoughts, you can email me, send me a message on the podcast Facebook page, post a comment on YouTube, or send me a voice message at the link in the show notes. Please send in your thoughts by the end of the day on March 15th, 2024. Please reach out to me if you have any questions on how to do this. Thank you in advance. Now, getting back to today's topic. Going through seasons of difficulty in our lives is a normal thing. It's not fun, but it is normal to face trials throughout points in our lives. When you face a trial, what do? Do you tend to worship God through the trial, or do you tend to drift from Him a little bit? Not like completely and totally rejecting faith, but just finding it harder to talk to God through the trial. I tend to maybe do a little bit of both depending on the day and the circumstance. Some days I might drift more, and other days I might worship more. When we face trials, it's okay to feel confused and sad. I actually have a story related to that, and I want to share it with you. I was going through a really difficult time once, and my grandma was super encouraging to me during one day in particular. I was struggling a lot during one point of that day, and I was in tears for a couple of minutes before I called her. The first few minutes after she and I started talking, I had to try especially hard, at first, to hold back tears and keep from crying, but it got better after a little time. Talking with my grandma that day when I was in the midst of sadness at that point was what I needed though. It really meant a lot to me, knowing that she wanted to be there for me and support me in either excitement or sadness, even though she lives far away from me. To have her there for me, willing to listen, helped. Sometimes I struggle to put into words what I'm feeling, and I don't always know who to call in the moment. I am so glad my grandma was able to help me that day. It was such a meaningful moment in my life. I'm so thankful to have her in my life. I know that I can go to her in the midst of tears and she won't judge me for crying. I know that instead of judging me, she will love me unconditionally and do whatever she can to love and support me, even from far away. There was also one time prior to that day where I had told her that I wish I had someone to talk to even when I'm in the midst of tears. A moment like that day is what I had envisioned. My grandma was that person for me that day. I needed that, and I am so thankful for her. I can't imagine my life without her. I don't know what I would do without her to be there supporting me through struggles. I know my life would look totally different if she wasn't a part of my life. She makes my life so much happier. Knowing that I can call her in the midst of tears is so encouraging to me. Knowing that I always have her love and support means the absolute world to me, and I can't imagine my life any other way than to have her in it. She is one of the people I trust the most. If I didn't have her as my grandma, my life would be boring, empty, sad, gray, and discouraging. She has impacted my life in so many ways. Every day, I am so excited to text her and tell her that I'm thinking about her. She is a wonderful role model for me of how a Christian should act. She seeks to encourage and uplift others even when she is facing her own difficulties, and she also does whatever she can to support and encourage others even when she is far away. I hope you have someone like that in your life who you can go to, even in the midst of tears. If you don't, I hope you can find someone like that soon. Having someone like that in your life that you can talk to can be an incredible blessing. Those who are older Christians, meaning further along in your faith walk, can and should come along the younger Christians, meaning newer to faith, and mentor them through hard trials. We are not meant to walk alone in this life. We need to have people come along beside us to help us. Eventually, we will be able to mentor and come alongside people who are newer to faith than we are. I would recommend looking in your church, a godly mentor, a therapist, a pastor, or another godly church leader. If you would like some help with that, or to get connected to a good church, please reach out to me, and I would love to help if I can. Being in a good church community is vital for our faith. If we aren't in a community with other believers, we won't have as much support around us when trials hit. We have to build up our community of other believers. Not only can they pour into us, but we can also pour into them as well. We need to surround ourselves with other believers. We can find hope by reading Psalms in our Bibles, by listening to encouraging music, praying, finding someone to talk to in our struggles, maybe going to a mental health specialist if needed, and by telling God how we're feeling. Sometimes you might feel like you are hanging on by a thin thread that could break at any second. That happens, and it's okay. The stress of life can be a lot, and it can leave us feeling weary and overwhelmed sometimes. An analogy I had thought of the day before I talked to my grandma was about how the tires can just spin and not go anywhere when a vehicle gets stuck in the mud. The same thing can also kind of apply to life. I know what it's like to feel stuck in life and to not feel like you are going anywhere, no matter how hard you try. It is so hard. I'm so sorry if you are facing that right now. It hurts, but God is still with you. He hasn't forgotten you. It might feel like he has, but he has you in the palm of his hand. Isaiah 49:16 in the English Standard Version. God will never leave you or forsake you. Hebrews 13:5b and Deuteronomy 31:6 English Standard Version. I know it feels like he has forgotten you, but there is hope if we focus on Jesus. You are not alone. God is fighting for you and he is in your midst. See Zephaniah 3:17. It isn't always easy to focus on Jesus, but focusing on him is a much better alternative than focusing on our problems. Kind of like how Peter kept his eyes on Jesus to keep himself afloat when he walked on the water toward Jesus during the big storm in Matthew 14, verses 22 to 33. I have mentioned that Bible story a couple of times on the podcast, but it is one of my favorites. I definitely recommend reading it for sure. I want you all to know that there is hope when we go through trials. It may not always feel that way though. Life is not going to be sunshine, happiness, and rainbows all the time. We will go through hard times. That is a guarantee. Let Jesus be your guide and your strength. You need to cry out to Jesus when you are in the midst of a trial. He wants to help you. Even in your tears, you can remember two things. One is that Jesus cried too when his friend Lazarus died. See John 11, verses 1 through 44. The other is that Jesus holds all the tears you cry and collects them in a bottle. Read Psalm 56:8. It is okay to cry sometimes. You don't have to hold everything in all the time. Let Jesus comfort and help you. He wants to help you. I have a couple playlists on Spotify that I want to share with you in the hopes that they will be an encouragement to you. One is called Hard Days, and the other is called Emotional/Mental Exhaustion. I will put links to both of them in the show notes, so feel free to check them out. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please follow, leave a comment, and a review of my podcast if you haven't already, and please follow my podcast page on Facebook so you never miss an update. If you have any verses you'd like me to read on a future episode, or if you have any topics you'd like me to talk about, you can email me at corachin@mailbox.org, send me a message on my podcast page on Facebook, or a voice message through the link in the show notes, and I will get back to you when I can. Hope you tune in next week for the 29th episode.